So congratulations, you already did a nice job in shaping these data. Let's assume that's your job. I guess your boss will already be very satisfied that you closed all the gaps here, that you, well, we forgot to close this gap. Okay. So we closed all the gaps. You can, in the best case, you can explain exactly what this is. You can explain what hardware cost it was, maintenance cost is, and you're really good at this. So now you're kind of the expert of this table. You're the owner of the table. You own the table now. That's very good for your reputation. So now the first task can start, right? I just set the date of the file to 2015, 1st of January, just to say that's our starting point, and then you can see how this evolves over time. So let's say you have your nice file here and you get another file from a colleague that's called server status. You see that's already cleaned up. I already cleaned it up. Let's just assume it's a file, server status, and he says, or he tells you this file is related to your file. Maybe it was your boss that sent you that file and he or she said, here's the new server status, please take that into consideration, right? And then you have to see how that fits in your structure, or how does that compare to your file. So let's see, what do we have here? Our original file. We have here the system ID, we have type, server, reg, and so on and so on. Now I go back to the other file. I see, okay, that's my first task. I want to understand how this relates, because sometimes it doesn't relate. Sometimes they just forward you an email and tell you, here's the new server status, and you cannot work at all with that. Sometimes happens, but I want to show you how to find it out and how to compare. So this looks actually really good here. Okay, we have this server. This is called system ID in the other file. Here it's called just server, but it looks very, very similar. So we can assume that's the same. Then we have something here called RAM and CPU. That's something we don't have in our original file. So either we don't need it, or maybe the task could be to add this information here in our file somehow. And I want to walk you through all that stuff. Let's just start with the cost, because that's something they have in common. Here's just hardware costs. We have also hardware costs, that's good. So we can assume that it's the same. If it would have been only cost, for example, then we would have a little of a problem, because we don't know if this is the column F or column G, or maybe something different, right? But now we see that these values are very similar to column F, and we assume, but we never know, but we can just assume that this is column F. I would always ask if this is the same, because sometimes, or really, really often, you're surprised how often this is not the case. So let me sum up before we really get started. If we have two files, there are some tasks that could evolve out of that. First task could be here, the first task is if this is really related, right? Here's an ID, here's an ID, looks very different. Okay, chances are 99% that this is the same ID. So then the second task could be, should I add this RAM CPU information to the other file, to this original file? Or should I update the cost? If I update the cost, is it column F or is it column G? Then the next thing, let me open that again. The next thing is, or should I not update it? Should I compare it? Should I compare old versus new? Should I say, is it now less or is it more? Then the other task could be, is it possible that one of these IDs here are not in the other list, is not in the other list? So can it be that one ID is missing here? Can it be the other way around, that one ID is in the white list but not in the colored list? Can it also be that one ID is double in this list? Can it be that this ID, for example, this is now a small list with 50 lines, but sometimes you have 500 or 5,000 lines, and you want to have a quick view if something is double, if something is missing. You need to get a picture of all that stuff before you really can get started. And I want to show you all of that, the whole thing, what task could happen, what could you do with all that data.